She said it like she was ordering dessert. To my real soulmate. He knows who he is. Glass in hand, eyes glinting with a smug little smirk, Allison delivered the line with the kind of performative flair you'd expect from a reality show confession. Not at our kitchen table, not in a whisper, but in a packed restaurant, surrounded by family, old friends, our adult children, and a couple of co-workers I barely tolerated. Our 30th wedding anniversary. 30 years of marriage, reduced to a punchline. Everyone froze. A few chuckled nervously, unsure if it was some kind of inside joke. A toast to the man she married, maybe? Some cute callback to our early days? No, her eyes never landed on me. I didn't flinch. I raised my glass and drank. Slowly, carefully. The wine was dry, her favorite. I had ordered it out of habit. Across from me, our son looked like he was about to say something, but then he bit down on his tongue. Our daughter stared at her phone like it might transport her out of the room. Allison just grinned and kept sipping. She thought she'd broken something, that she'd set fire to a house with no fire alarms. The thing is, she was 6 months too late. Back in the garage, under an old tarp labeled holiday decorations, sat a hidden fire extinguisher of my own, a steel lockbox bolted behind the third rafter beam. Inside it, a red folder thicker than our wedding album, and far more interesting. Affair timelines, financial spreadsheets, voice memos, legal drafts, copies of her chat logs, retrieved legally, meticulously, quietly. People like her don't notice silence. They think silence means surrender. But silence is just where planning starts. She had spent the last 2 years finding creative new ways to flirt with danger, to test the elasticity of my patience. Weekend trips to see her college friend. Mysterious yoga retreats where no yoga mats ever came back. A sudden interest in late-night philosophy courses, despite the fact she'd once called Socrates some bald cult guy. I played the fool. I let her think the stage was hers. I never raised my voice. Never changed my routine. Just watched, learned, and prepared. Because betrayal doesn't always come with fireworks. Sometimes it's a wine glass and a smirk. The kind of smirk that assumes you're too weak, too comfortable, too tired to do anything about it. That night, after the last fake hug and air kiss from guests who had no idea, I watched her collapse on the couch in our den, kicking off her shoes with a self-satisfied sigh. She scrolled her phone, laughed at something, sent a text. I walked past her unbothered. I didn't even look at her. Just opened the garage, unlocked the box, and pulled out my folder like a man grabbing an umbrella before a long-awaited storm. This wasn't the night everything fell apart. It was the night everything clicked into place. And by the way, if you've made it this far, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button. 97% of you listen without subscribing, and yeah, I get it. But trust me, every time you do, it lights a fire under the team to keep unearthing stories like this one. Let's just say, the quiet ones. We've got plenty more where that came from. Back in the den, she started humming. I stared at the folder in my hand. I didn't feel rage. I didn't feel grief. I felt ready. He didn't even blink, faced with tears of joy. Allison typed it with her usual mix of mockery and overconfidence, the kind that made you wonder if she ever actually considered consequences, or if she just assumed the world would quietly rearrange itself around her audacity. It was a private group chat. Her sister Valerie, a college friend named Tasha, and some woman named Bree I'd never met. The thread was titled The Coven, which tells you everything you need to know. Messages flew in rapid succession after the anniversary dinner. Allison was giddy, high on her own drama. That moment I toasted my real soulmate, and Mark just sat there. Priceless. Valerie responded with a laughing emoji, then, kinda savage though. You sure that wasn't too much? Tasha chimed in. Girl, that was legendary. You're a goddess. Then came the voice message. 47 seconds long. I played it through noise-canceling headphones in my office, sipping my coffee as if it were just another podcast episode. I didn't react the first time, or the second. By the third listen, I started transcribing it, word for word, into the file labeled Phase 1, Psychological Profile. Her voice was smug, relaxed, like she was planning a vacation, not detonating a marriage. I mean, let's be honest, he's so numb it's boring. Like, I could tell him I'm leaving and he'd probably just go mow the lawn. I've got options though. Real ones. James is back in town. We've been texting. Long story. But if I'm going to start over, might as well be with someone who still has a pulse, right? She laughed at her own punchline. I didn't. The irony was, James wasn't her real soulmate. He was a sweaty chiropractor from her hometown who once played guitar in a bar band called Steel Magnolia. The kind of man who wore leather bracelets in his 50s and posted shirtless mirror selfies captioned, "Still got it." He didn't. But I wasn't competing with James. I was competing with her fantasy of him, something no man could win against. I realized then she didn't want a partner. She wanted an audience. Someone to worship her new, independent woman arc like it wasn't built on the bones of 30 years of shared history. What she didn't realize, what none of them realized, was that every keystroke, every smug little emoji, every audio file laced with mockery, was mirrored in real time to a device in my office drawer. The same device I installed after she accidentally left her laptop open one night with a thread from James that began with, "I miss the way you smell after wine." She claimed it was old, that it meant nothing, that she'd been drunk. "You're paranoid, Mark. It's your job. You don't know how to switch off." I didn't argue. I just switched on something else. I bought a refurbished phone, set up screen mirroring, synced the chat apps to it, hid it inside a decoy modem box under my desk. The only time it made noise was when she sent a particularly long voice memo, like the one last night. I watched The Coven in real time, like a low-rent soap opera with worse writing and better stakes. The messages kept coming. "Valerie, wait. James. Again? Allison, don't start. He gets me." Mark just fades into the wallpaper. That one made me pause. Fades into the wallpaper. If only they knew how many wires I'd run behind that metaphorical wallpaper. How many details I'd mapped while pretending to zone out during her monologues about office drama or her new gluten intolerance. They thought I was numb. They didn't know numb men don't build traps. I wasn't just watching. I was recording. For someone who always warned others about digital footprints, she sure loved walking barefoot through a field of landmines. And I was just getting started. It was 8:43 a.m. when my phone buzzed. Unknown caller. I almost didn't answer. I figured it was another spammer offering me extended vehicle warranties for a car I sold 15 years ago. But something made me swipe. "Mark." The voice was shaky, breath caught between guilt and dread. It was Valerie, Allison's younger sister. The same Valerie who once drunkenly cried at our Thanksgiving dinner because her fiancé left her for a Pilates instructor. The same Valerie who borrowed $5,000 from us in 2012 and never paid it back. She hadn't called me in over 3 years. "Valerie." A silence, then a wet sniffle. I didn't know she'd go that far last night. That toast. "Mark, I'm sorry. I didn't agree with any of this." I didn't say much. I let her flounder in the awkwardness she'd earned. "She said it was just a joke," she rushed on. "But that wasn't a joke. That was cruel. I know you. I know what you've done for her. And for our family. God, I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I didn't know how ugly it had gotten." Still, I said nothing. She finally stopped talking. I let the moment breathe. "I understand," I said evenly. "And I think you'll understand something too. Soon." Click. I didn't wait for a reply. No need to. Guilt had already rotted its way into her chest. I knew the type. She'd sit with it, turn it over, obsess. And when the file arrived, she'd open it without hesitation. By noon, it was in her inbox. Subject, for context. Password, 1989 Lake House. I picked that date intentionally. Valerie would remember. That was the summer Allison almost drowned, and I carried her out of the water in front of the whole family. Back when Allison still looked at me like I was something solid in a world made of fog. Valerie had been there. She cried harder than Allison. She'd open it. And she did. It took 8 minutes. The email system flagged a download from her phone, then her desktop. I watched the timestamps populate on the mirrored server. The file wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a manifesto. It was clinical, cold, precise. Folder 1, chat logs from The Coven, including Allison's full voice memo from the night of the toast, transcribed and timestamped. Folder 2, photographic evidence, taken by a PI over 3 months. James and Allison, hotel lobbies, dinner tables, her yoga retreat, showing up as a casino weekend. There was one photo of her sitting in James's lap in a hotel bar, laughing, flipping the bird at someone off camera. Folder 3, financial activity from our joint account. Quiet transfers to a private card she didn't think I noticed. Airbnb stays under a fake name. One flag charge, lingerie store in Chicago, same weekend as her work seminar. Folder 4, a short video compilation. Surveillance footage from our lake house's exterior cam. She never noticed I replaced the old system. She also never noticed it ran audio. The clip played her on the phone with someone, James, presumably, laughing. He's like a statue. I could light myself on fire, and he'd ask if I needed a coat. Valerie would watch it all, and she'd understand that toast wasn't a joke. It was a declaration of war. 3 hours later, my phone buzzed again. No voice message. Just a text. I didn't know. I didn't want to know. I'm sorry. I didn't reply. Apologies at this point were like band-aids on a sinking ship. Let her sit in it. Let her carry it. That weight was hers now. The office smelled like orchids and printer toner. It was perched above a florist shop that catered mostly to funeral homes and last-minute apologies. You wouldn't know there was a law firm above it unless you were looking for it, and I was. I chose this firm for a reason. Discreet, thorough, and most importantly, loyal to clients who paid in full and asked no dumb questions. Martindale, ESQ, looked like the kind of man who hadn't cracked a joke since 2003. His suits were always dark, his expressions always neutral, and he had the rare ability to talk for 90 minutes without using a single adjective. Exactly what I needed. We didn't shake hands. We nodded. He gestured to the manila folder on the table like it was a menu. We're ready. For documents. Each one designed to be silent, devastating, and entirely legal. First, the trust. I had already moved our liquid assets, checking, savings, and the investment account she rarely bothered to look at, into a protected, irrevocable trust under my name. She'd only ever see the afterimage of it if she hired a forensic accountant. Even then, good luck piercing that veil. Second, the infidelity clause. Most people don't bother. They think prenuptial agreements are just glorified fire extinguishers, something you install and hope you'll never use. But mine had teeth. She signed it in '93, when we were young, broke, and very much in love. I kept the original, laminated, stored in a fireproof box. She never asked why I still kept it. Third, temporary freeze on jointly held properties. Our family home, the lake house, even the condo downtown I bought when my business took off. Technically still under my name, despite her insistence on renovating it together. Frozen. No access. No ability to lease, sell, or even enter without written consent. A judge had pre-signed the order last week. All it needed was today's timestamp. Fourth, the dossier. We called it the PI package, though the term didn't do it justice. It was an indexed, chronological record of her movements over the past 5 months. Hotel reservations, GPS data, surveillance photos. One sequence even showed her leaving the gym in yoga gear and entering a wine bar with James 20 minutes later. She hadn't broken a sweat. The footage didn't just confirm the affair. It captured the texture of it, the routine, the intimacy, the pattern. This wasn't a mistake. It was a system. She wanted options, I said flatly, flipping to the last page for my signature. Martin clicked his pen. Let's give her a few less. I signed everything. Black ink. Slow strokes. Martin slid the final folder back into its envelope. This will trigger a 48-hour notification protocol. She'll receive an official statement of separation, a financial summary, and notification that her access to joint accounts has been suspended pending review. In English, in 2 days, she won't be able to buy gum without your approval. I nodded. Good. I stood to leave. One more thing, Martin added. Would you like me to contact her counsel directly, or? No, I interrupted. Let her find out the way I did. The way I found out about James. About Chicago. About the wine bar. About her soul-crushing toast at dinner. Let her find out with the same cold clarity. The same silence. The same inability to scream at anyone who would listen. Let her check her phone and realize the locks are changing. That her cards are frozen. That the house she once ruled like a queen now has a closed drawbridge and a moat full of lawyers. Let her scramble. The papers were done. The fuse was lit. Now came the wait. Not for destruction, but for revelation. It started with goat cheese. She stood at the checkout, balancing a basket full of overpriced organic nonsense and 2 bottles of her favorite Pinot Grigio, the one she always insisted tasted like sophistication. The cashier scanned each item with the dead-eyed rhythm of someone who's seen 100 tired marriages come through their lane before noon. Swipe. Declined. She frowned, tried to play it off. Huh, that's odd. Swipe again. Declined. She reached for another card, one linked to our joint checking account. Declined. The cashier's expression shifted slightly, half apology, half judgment. Allison's ears turned pink. She gave the tight, forced laugh of a woman trying to act like her world wasn't fracturing over a $76 grocery run. I'll just call the bank. Probably some fraud thing, she mumbled, stepping aside, tapping frantically at her phone screen. On the other end, hold music. Generic jazz and robotic reassurances that your call is important to us. She hung up and dialed my number. Straight to voicemail. Again, straight to voicemail. By the third time, the smile on her face had cracked. Her hands were trembling now, clutching her phone like it owed her an explanation. She didn't like silence. She was used to noise. Control. She left her groceries at the register and stormed to the parking lot, nearly clipping a shopping cart on the way out. That's when her phone rang. Valerie. She answered like an attacked dog. Tell me what's going on. Valerie's voice was quiet. Too quiet. You need to talk to Mark. Don't play dumb. Did he freeze the accounts? Did you tell him something? What did you do? A beat. Then, barely above a whisper. He sent me everything. Silence. I know about James, Valerie continued. I know about Chicago. The hotel. The photos. The money transfers. The voice messages. All of it. Allison didn't speak. Valerie inhaled shakily. Then, you've lied to all of us. That one hit deeper than I could have delivered myself. Because Allison could handle me being angry. Even her kids. But her sister? Her confidant? Her ride-or-die shopping partner? And vodka martini therapist? She wasn't supposed to flip. But guilt works fast when it comes in HD clarity. And I didn't just give Valerie the proof. I gave her the context. The dates. The smiles. The calculated cruelty. I didn't know he'd go this far. Allison finally whispered, her tone collapsing in on itself. Valerie didn't argue. She just said, you should have expected it the moment you raised that glass. Click. Call ended. Allison stared at her screen like it had turned into a courtroom. Everything around her blurred. The honk of a car, a child crying, a shopping cart rattling over gravel. None of it registered. Her entire life, curated, coordinated, curated again, was beginning to pixelate at the edges. The man she thought was wallpaper had just pulled the power plug, and she hadn't even made it to the wine aisle. By the time she reached the lake house, her carefully constructed narrative had already begun to peel at the seams. She drove like a woman being chased, not by cars, but by consequence. The tires screeched slightly when she pulled into the gravel driveway, dust curling around her windows like smoke from a slow-burning fuse. The lake sat still, serene, mocking. She hadn't been here in over 2 months, since her last me-time getaway, which, according to her calendar, coincided suspiciously with one of James's business trips. She always returned looking sun-kissed and mysteriously exhausted. I never asked. She thought silence meant permission. It didn't. It meant, keep digging. Allison marched up the porch steps, sunglasses perched like armor on her nose, hair in that tight bun she always wore when she was pretending everything was fine. She jammed her key into the lock. Nothing. She jiggled, turned, pushed, pulled. Still nothing. That's when she noticed it. A white sheet of paper, laminated and duct taped to the door. Notice of entry restriction. Property under temporary legal review. Access limited to legal counsel and authorized parties. For inquiries, contact Martindale, ESQ. Phone, redacted. Case hashtag A371. Court-sealed documents pending review. Her eyes scanned the words again and again, like they'd rearrange themselves if she blinked hard enough. No, 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 no. She slammed her palm against the door. Then again, then harder. Her voice broke into a rasp as she shouted into the dead air. This is my house. The echo returned with indifference. A screen door creaked across the street. Mr. Ellery, the neighbor, emerged holding a mug that said, World's Okayest Golfer. He squinted across the yard. Allison, everything all right? She spun around, the panic barely concealed. Just, key trouble. Locks jammed. He tilted his head. Huh, that's weird. Thought Mark sold this place months ago. She blinked. Excuse me. Yeah, I remember the movers. Whole truckload of stuff came out of there. Figured it was downsizing. He told me it was all handled. She stared at him like he'd spoken in a different language. No, he wouldn't do that without telling me. Ellery shrugged. Well, guess he just did. She didn't reply, didn't move. She just stood there, key still in hand, gripping it like a relic from a life that no longer existed. Her fortress, her retreat, her hideaway, gone. She stepped back and looked at the lake house, not as a home, but as a stranger, something reclaimed by silence. It wasn't hers anymore, and for the first time, she started to understand. This wasn't about money or revenge. It was about access, territory, identity, and Mark had just revoked all of it. The worst part? She didn't even see it coming. The knock at the door was soft, too soft for a delivery, not urgent enough to be a neighbor, just that awkward, half-hearted tap of someone doing a job they didn't care about. Allison shuffled across the cheap vinyl floor of her temporary rental, a furnished Airbnb that smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and desperation. She hadn't unpacked fully. She wasn't planning on staying long, just a few days, until Mark calmed down, until she figured out how to spin things back in her favor. She always could, eventually. She opened the door. No one there. Just a red envelope resting on the welcome mat. Not burgundy. Not maroon. Red. Unapologetically, fire alarm red. Thick. Heavy. Embossed with nothing but her full name in block print across the front. No return address. No logo. She brought it inside like it might bite. On the couch, alone, still in the same sweatpants she'd worn for 2 days, she stared at it for a minute. Then tore the seal. The contents fell out like a slow-motion car crash. First, a neat stack of printed messages. Text threads. Snippets of the Coven chat. Voice message transcripts. Little toxic jewels of self-incrimination. Every cruel laugh. Every fake alibi. Every smug prediction. She scanned one line, underlined in red. Let's see how numb he is when I'm gone. I've got options. Her mouth went dry. Next, a timeline. Cleanly formatted. Private investigator log. Photos included. Chicago trip, timestamped. James's hand on her thigh at the rooftop bar. Hotel check-in at 9:37 p.m. Checkout at 10:11 a.m. the next day. Miami yoga retreat. Zero record of event existence. Meanwhile, James tagged in a beach bar on the same street. They knew. He knew. Then came the notarized letter. Legal separation. Formal. Irrevocable. Asset list attached. She read the word irretrievable breakdown, and for the first time in weeks, felt the word breakdown in her chest. Finally, a single 5x7 photo. Her. At the anniversary dinner. Mid-toast. Glass raised. Smirk immortalized in crisp color. Someone had taken it from across the room. Stealthy, perfect angle. She looked triumphant. Radiant. Oblivious. A yellow post, it stuck to the back read. You toasted your soulmate. He can help now. She didn't cry. Not at first. Instead, she sat there for 10 minutes. Frozen. Staring at the evidence of her own undoing. Her own performance laid bare. Curated lies now pinned to the corkboard of her existence. And then, like someone had unplugged the last working light in her body, she caved. She slid to the floor, knees first, arms limp at her side, face pressed into the carpet of a stranger's rental. And she sobbed. Not dainty, tear-stream sobs, but heaving, throat-ripping cries. The kind that don't ask for sympathy, just punishment. She cried for the things she lost, yes, but more for the things she thought she'd always control. Mark didn't raise his voice. He didn't argue. He didn't post rage online or rant to their kids. He just mailed her a mirror and forced her to look. And what she saw was the death of her version of the story. She almost didn't come. The email invitation had arrived 2 days prior, brief and bloodless. Same place, same table, Saturday at 7 p.m. No warmth, no apology, no clue what it was about. Just coordinates. Like a sniper offering one last glance through the scope before pulling the trigger. She stared at it for hours. Read it 40 times. Forwarded it to Valerie with nothing more than. Valerie never replied. But Allison showed up. Of course she did. Hope, after all, is a terminal condition. Especially for people who think charm can outlive consequence. She walked in 7 minutes late. Not intentionally. This wasn't her usual power play. She was scrambling. She'd tried on 3 different outfits, scrubbed under her eyes twice, even tried to curl her hair, but the iron had shorted out halfway through, so she tied it up in a bun again. Her armor. The hostess didn't smile, just nodded and led her to the table in the back. Same one from their anniversary. The one beneath the amber light with the flickering candle that somehow never seemed to burn down. Mark was already seated. Same suit. Same watch. Same glass of wine, half full. He looked up. And for a moment, she saw it. The ghost of the man she married. Not furious. Not broken. Just finished. Allison, he said. She sat, slowly, hands fidgeting with the napkin. I wasn't sure if you were. I was always going to come, she interrupted. I didn't know what this was. I mean, what you wanted to. Mark raised a hand. Calm, like a conductor cueing a soloist to rest. I just wanted you to know, he said, what it feels like to sit across from someone who already made their choice. Silence stretched across the table like barbed wire. She opened her mouth, then closed it. Her eyes darted toward his hand, no ring. Her own fingers still bore the indentation where hers had once lived, though she hadn't worn it since the grocery store incident. Mark reached down beside his chair and placed a small black velvet box on the table between them. No words, just a gesture. She hesitated, then opened it. Inside, a single gold ring, worn thin on one side, the same one he'd worn for 30 years. Beneath it, a receipt, dated the morning after their anniversary. Pawned, then repurchased that morning. Just for this. Paid in full, cash. No refund. She stared at it like it might explode. I don't need it anymore, he said softly. It meant something to me once. But I think I've already buried that version of us. She swallowed hard. Mark, I don't need an apology, he cut in. I needed closure. And I got it. He stood. She didn't. He pulled a few bills from his wallet, dropped them on the table, and nodded toward the server. No need to split the check. I already paid. Then, with one final glance, not cold, not cruel, just done, he walked out. The candle flickered once, then again, then died. Allison sat alone, in the same seat where she had once toasted her real soulmate, full of wine and venom. And now, nothing to toast, no one to aim it at, just a ring in a box, and a receipt she could never return. The subject line was sterile, almost corporate. Family update, please read carefully. It hit their adult children's inboxes at exactly 6 a.m. on Sunday morning. Scheduled, deliberate, calculated to arrive before church, before brunch, before the day's excuses could take hold. Mark never liked mess. Not in the house, not in business, not in emotion. Even now, in rupture, he handled the collapse like an engineer disassembling a bridge, slowly, section by section, until no weight could cross. The email came from his personal address. Not a lawyer, not a third party, just him. Jason, Megan, I wanted you to hear this from me directly, not from whispers or secondhand updates. I've filed for legal separation from your mother. Attached is a summary of the case and relevant documents. I know this seems sudden, but I want you to know it isn't. This was simply the end of a line that's been fraying for years. I didn't want to involve you until I had no choice. I've included a folder with screenshots and transcripts that may be difficult to read. I only ask that you go through them before forming conclusions. I've tried to protect our family from shame, from public fallout, from drama, but I cannot protect us from the truth. You're both adults. You deserve the full picture. I love you, Dad. There were 3 attachments. The first, a PDF from Mark's attorney. A clean, orderly summary of the separation, dates, claims, infidelity clause, division of assets. Unemotional. Impeccable. The second, correspondence.zip, an archive containing screenshots of Allison's private group messages, transcribed voice notes, and photos from her not-so-secret trips. Nothing tabloid-worthy. Just enough quiet betrayal to redraw their understanding of her. The third, a .txt file named Context. It was simple. A letter from a man who had been humiliated, yes, but not defeated. It didn't rant. It didn't accuse. It mourned. Not just the marriage, but the illusion of partnership. The subtle death of loyalty. The way someone can sleep beside you for decades while slowly inching their soul toward someone else. At 6:14 a.m., Jason read the email. He didn't reply. At 6:32 a.m., Megan opened the attachments. Her screen dimmed. She didn't touch her coffee. At 7:02 a.m., in the family group chat, called the Bakers OG Edition, something small, almost forgettable, happened. Allison's profile picture disappeared. The beach selfie she took in Cabo, wearing the oversized sunglasses and floppy straw hat, was replaced by the default gray silhouette. Someone had removed her. Not blocked. Not reported. Just erased. 5 minutes later, a message appeared. Allison, can we please talk about this before everyone assumes the worst? No one replied. Not Mark. Not Jason. Not Megan. The typing bubbles didn't even flicker. 10 minutes later, another. Allison, This is being taken completely out of context. You're only hearing his version. Still nothing. No dots. No reactions. No digital sighs. Just cold silence. She sat in the kitchen of her rental, staring at the message thread that had once been filled with birthday videos and wedding planning and who's bringing what for Thanksgiving. Now it was a tomb. Her children had read everything, and they'd drawn their own conclusions, not from rage, not from pity, from proof. All she had left was that blinking cursor. Waiting, begging, alone. The call came in at 11:41 p.m., just late enough to feel desperate, just early enough to still expect an answer. Mark was in bed, book in hand, reading by lamplight. The room was quiet, filled with the steady hum of a man who had finally learned how to sleep again. The screen lit up. Allison. He let it ring twice before tapping accept. He didn't speak first. All he heard was breathing, uneven, fragile, full of unshed words. Then came the whisper, cracked and guttural. All I did was make a joke. Mark didn't move. She tried again, her voice fraying. Mark, it was a joke. A stupid toast. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. There it was, the final defense. Not denial, not rage, but a plea for minimization. The last shelter of people who burn down houses and swear they only lit a candle. Mark placed his bookmark gently, closed the cover, and said, No, Allison, you didn't make a joke. You made a statement. Silence. And I just made one too. Click. Call ended. He didn't wait to hear the sob. Didn't check to see if she called back. He powered off the phone, set it on the nightstand, and turned out the light. Across town, Allison stood in the doorway of the small rental she'd been living in since her world caved in. The walls were bare. The fridge half empty. Her once booming social calendar had fallen silent. Her phone contacts thinned. Group chats, quiet. Even Valerie had stopped returning texts. The last message she received simply read, I don't know who you are anymore. Her suitcases were packed. Again. But this time, there was no plan. No lake house escape. No secret lover's arms. No passive income to fall back on. No children to smooth things over. Just a $79 motel reservation and the echo of a man she thought was wallpaper. She stared at the phone screen like it might forgive her. It didn't. She thought he was numb. She thought he'd never act. She thought control was eternal. But the man who didn't flinch? He didn't need to. Because he'd already left the moment she raised that glass. And everything after that, every frozen card, every closed door, every red envelope, wasn't revenge. It was arithmetic. Quiet. Calculated. Final. And now, with no one left to blame, she was left with the one thing she never planned for. Silence.